Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you to everybody that showed up at Twin Peaks yesterday. We had a great time. Shout out to my people from Ironton, Lima, Andy Joe, and Thomas from up in Toledo. Appreciate all you guys coming down. Again, it was a great time. What a blast. It was a great 4 hours or so. Everybody had a great time. The staff said you guys were amazing, so I appreciate you taking care of them. The owners were thrilled with the turnout. So thank you guys for all that you guys do. As always, we appreciate you. We have a huge show, a lot of recruiting stuff to digest. We're going to take your super chats. The Silicon Finish is the best class in the history of recruiting. So we're very excited about some of the guys that could be reclassifying and jumping in, and we're going to break all of that down. As always, we're going to take your questions. If you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of that helps. We appreciate all of you guys supporting us, leaving positive reviews, clicking likes, even commenting on our YouTube videos is a huge way to help affect and make these shows big. Even if it's just where you're watching from, who you're watching with, something simple as that. Those really help our videos, so we appreciate you guys doing that. And again, we appreciate all the support. We go every single day. You checked yesterday, we're the only guys working, so it was actually really fun to talk a little Dorian Brew when a lot of people wanted answers as to what go on, and we delivered. We had the whole inside story on what happened, how I ended up at Oregon on yesterday's show. We'll talk a little bit about it today. And we appreciate you guys as always. Thank you to our troops. Thank you to our warriors overseas. Thank you to all of our armed forces, our police officers, men and women, firefighters, first responders. We appreciate you guys so very much. We had a couple of veterans at our event yesterday, police officer at our event yesterday. Just absolutely fantastic talking to you guys and being able to thank you guys for what you guys did in person. Again, we don't take that for granted here on Buckeye Scoop. My father-in-law was a decorated naval officer. Nevada's father was an Air Force guy. Nevada grew up as an Air Force brat. So we appreciate you guys in a very significant manner. We just really appreciate all you guys do. So thank you, as always. We can't say it enough. It might sound redundant sometimes, but we never take it for granted, and we just want to say it on almost every show. So thank you guys. With that being said, going to bring in my good friend, Nevada. A lot of consternation yesterday. The Dorian Brew thing was somewhat shocking, but again, when a kid leaves his high school team on a Friday afternoon to move to Texas, and the dad's kind of shopping him to the Texas A&M, Texas, and Oregon, and he decides to pop to Oregon all of a sudden. Like I think he's a really talented kid. I think he's a super athletic kid. He'd been a great fit here, but I mean, sometimes things don't work out, but somehow Ohio State is like a freight train that keeps rolling down the tracks no matter who's on it. What is your reaction to that? And what are some of the positive things that are coming this way? Because there's some big time kids that are going to be committing to Ohio State this week, it looks like.
Well, I mean, tomorrow it looks like we got another St. Joe's prep kid in Maxwell Roy that should be committing to Ohio State. Big defensive lineman. Again, a guy that Larry Johnson really, really covets as part of this super talented defensive line class that Ohio State's putting together right now. Really one of the better ones in recent memory for them. And then on July 3rd, you've got Justin Hill, the edge from Winton Woods. And again, I think he's one of the best players in the state of Ohio. Certainly one of the best defensive players. Terrific rusher, one of the best pass rushers in the entire Midwest, maybe in the country. I just love everything this kid does. I love everything he brings to the defense, and he's another one that's set to commit to Ohio State as well. So while the Dorian Brew thing, I've had 24 hours to kind of digest it, check with sources on it, recheck, double check information. I think the information was really good, and I think the Nigel Glover thing was really something that when you talk to people closest to him, that just kept popping up as an issue. And I think, for Ohio State, I don't think this one's over. I don't think that they're done. I don't think they'll stop recruiting him. But, guys like Dorian Brew, they come in every class, and I'm just not going to be that broken up about it. If I was, believe me, I would tell you. We put one of the core tenets of our podcast as being complete honesty with you guys. And if I was broken up, I'd be like, guys, this one hurts. This one, but I just can't get there. I just can't. And I'm not going to lie and say, oh, wow, this is somebody's fault, or this somebody screwed this one up, or this. I just think sometimes things happen, and I've generally found in life, in both my personal, business, professional life, as well as doing this as a recruiting, that these things 99% of the time they work out the best for all involved. And one of my favorite sayings is, it's not the guys that you miss on that kill you, it's the guys that you get that can't play that kill you. And I think for Ohio State, we'll be just fine whether or not Dorian Brew reconsiders his Oregon commitment, or if he goes on to Oregon. I'm just trying to think about the guys. Every time a guy leaves out of here and goes out of state, not every time, but vast majority of times, man, you replace him with somebody better. We could go down the list. Sean Crable, Prescott Burgess, Jackson Carmen, Blake Miller. I mean, just like go down the Andre Walker. I mean, there's just like a long, Fred Davis. Every time that a kid from Ohio. But the thing with Dorian, I mean, Dorian was an Ohio kid, but he moved to Texas, so he wasn't even in the state already. So there already was kind of an extenuating circumstance for that. But every time an Ohio kid goes elsewhere, people want heads to roll. And I think, in this case, it just, they weren't getting through the Nigel Glover thing. They weren't getting through that. And, once the die was cast on that, I think that it was just a matter of time till they picked somewhere else, and Oregon was the place to go.
I agree. I mean, I can't get worked up over a kid that, his mom is a track star, was an all-conference track athlete at Ohio State. Dad was a national track star, really. So, I mean, he's an explosive athlete. But, mom picked up and, they kind of took their ball and went home after he had 100 yards in a game. And then the next week, another receiver came in and had 200, and he didn't play as much. And they, the mom kind of had a fit and decided to move to Texas, where closer to dad. And I mean, they're not together. So, but they don't have a great relationship, but it was good enough where, hey, bring him down here. He can play for me. We'll get him on the team. And I mean, this is like week 5 of the high school season. So this isn't like it's the NFL, or, I mean, you can't even do that in college. Just leave in the middle of the year and go play somewhere else. But that's what he did. And it was, that raises an eyebrow. I don't care what's going on, but to not even tell the high school coach on a Friday, hey, by the way, he's withdrawing from school, and for the high school coach to find out at 4:00 on Friday night, because again, for those of you that didn't play high school football, if you get off school at 2:15, you usually have to be back in the building at 4:30 ish. You do a little walkthrough, you do a little stuff, pregame stuff, then you go play at 7. So the coach found out at 4:00 that Dorian had withdrawn from school. He practiced the day before. He was at school, and then he withdrew from school like that afternoon. So that's weird, And again, if that's not a data point, then I don't know what is in life. And again, I'm not saying I won't take the kid, because I think he's a superstar athlete. I think that he's a 5-star in the spread offense era. He's the perfect guy that has played corner, and I think will absolutely grow into being like a safety, a nickel, kind of he'd be a perfect Jordan Hancock type player, where he could play slot on first down and be physical enough to run, because he's huge for a corner. And I think that when you're that athletic and cat quick to play corner, then you can bump into safety. Those are the guys that make a ton of money in the NFL. So, would I take him? Absolutely. But does the handling of the kid by the parents raise an eyebrow? Yeah. And again, it is what it is. And I've got kids, and, I don't know if I'd go about it that way. Even if I was really upset with the coach, I don't know if I'd pull my kid off the team in the middle of the season and move to Texas that night. That's a little crazy, but it is what it is. And again, he, God bless him. I don't think we're out of it. I think that, when you talk to a lot of these kids and you're dealing with agents and you're dealing with money, Oregon's going to be a power player in the NIL. There's no question about it. But so are we. I mean, we could match any offer, but at some point, we've got a lot of really good DBs in this class. I think we get Naheem Alford, and we're going to be as dominant in the back end as we've ever been this year going into next year. So, there's going to be a point where, some of these kids are going to get, in my opinion, overpaid, because teams don't have as talented of recruiting classes as specific position groups. So, eventually, if you've got 3 of the top, defensive backs in the country already committed, if you lose your 4th one, and you can save a ton of money, eventually, that money can be put towards, David Sanders Jr., or it can be put towards a defensive tackle. There's Jakeem Stewart. There's a lot of different spots that you could look at that I think would make a lot more sense. So, with that being said, we've got David Sanders Jr., we've got Jakeem Stewart, we've got there's a lot of chatter about Chris Henry potentially reclassifying. I think that reclassifying is going to become the new normal because these kids are trying to get to the NIL money as fast as possible, especially when they're in states that don't allow these kids to get paid in high school. So a lot of interesting stuff because I think Jakeem Stewart's going to reclassify, and I think that is that the best thing in the world for his development? No, but is it the best thing for his financial situation? Yeah. So he's going to be real interesting, and between him and David Sanders, they both have blank checks from Ohio State at this point, because we're not going to get beat on either of those guys from a monetary sense. So I'm excited about it. I think this is going to be a monstrous class. And Nevada, how high could this thing finish? Because that's like the thing is, Dorian Brew is projected to be in this class by every single analyst known to man. Which again, this is why we've moved away from the recruiting analyst stuff because all these predictions can go up and be a smoking hole like an atomic bomb just with one NIL deal or one weird thing that happens, like what happened with Dorian Brew, where every single recruiting guy missed on him. But we're still the number one recruiting class. I think that we can climb even higher. What's your outlook going forward? Because again, there's some monstrous fish on the line right now for Ohio State, and I think we're the leaders for almost all of them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, like I said, you got to knock down the two. I just think you got to take them one at a time. You got to get Maxwell Roy tomorrow. You got to have Justin Hill happen on Wednesday, and just start knocking these things off one at a time. And it's going to be interesting to see how Ohio State threads the needle from an NIL standpoint because we can talk about Jakeem Stewart having a blank check, or you can talk about David Sanders having a blank check, or you can talk about DeCorian Moore getting the majority of our wide receiver money because we're going all in on DK Moore. But at some point, you know, as you've pointed out many, many times, all these guys have representation now, and they're represented by a lot of the same people. So people know what the market is, for these players. And if you're paying everybody at the top of the market, or somebody keeps resetting the market every time, at some point the NIL money runs dry. I mean, I know we like to think of it as kind of this never-ending well of things, but it's really interesting because I know Ohio State's up their NIL game. I know with revenue sharing, obviously Ohio State will have as much money as anybody. I think it's $22 million a year to divvy up between men's and women's athletics and football and basketball and everything else like that. But that'll be more money that's coming in. But that gets chunked up really quickly when you're paying guys $800,000 a year, $1 million a year. These $100,000 a month checks that go to these players, man, that can really rack up really quickly. So I'm going to be interested to see how Ohio State threads the needle on this because at some point you're going to have to make tough choices and you're going to have to make decisions like in every business. It's all business decisions basically come down to resource allocation. Where are you allocating your resources? Towards development, towards sales and marketing, towards operations, towards where are you putting your money? And I think for Ohio State, they're going to have to make some choices in this because, as you said, we're in on so many top players coming down the stretch, and we lead for virtually every single one of these guys. But you've got to make sure that the NIL money's there because if you promise guys money and then you don't deliver, you know what you end up with? You end up with USC. USC is having just their class is completely hemorrhaging. All these commitments are going out. You know why? Because they didn't live up to their NIL commitments. And even Jordan Addison, the big wide receiver commitment from Pitt that transferred out there to USC, he got 50% of the money that they promised him. Never got the money. So USC's NIL is a mess right now. And when that happens, when you start making commitments and then start backing them up, your classes start to unwind. And I think for Ohio State right now, they've got to make some tough decisions regarding resource allocation. They've got to bring this class home, and they've got to deliver on all the promises. And that's again, that's leaning on the foundation heavily, and that's leaning on Ted Carter and Ross Bjork to make sure that the fundraising from the school and the decisions they make regarding revenue sharing are the right ones. Because I heard Ross talk about how he felt like out of the $22 million that they needed to follow Title IX, and that 52% of that would go to men's sports and 48% of that would go to women's sports. And with all due respect, and I don't know exactly what that means, but I mean, football's the big dog. I mean, football at Ohio State is just about the whole enchilada. I mean, men's basketball to a way lesser degree, and then everything else. So, in my opinion, of that $22 million, the revenue should be allocated accordingly, and we're going to need it. But yeah, I don't envy these guys having to make these decisions and to navigate this brave new world of college football and college football recruiting. But I think you just got to take it one at a time. And that one is tomorrow's Maxwell Roy. Let's get that one in the boat. Let's move on to Justin Hill, and let's finish this class off.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to you earlier. 'Cause, we talk 8 hours a day. It feels like, but I'm like, what we're dealing with right now with NIL is, you've got X amount of dollars, and it would be like if you ran, like say you ran like an NFL team, you ran the Chicago Bears, or you ran whoever, and all of your players became free agents every single year, and all of a sudden they're all exposed to people that can poach them, and you got. I mean, this is like something that you really got to have. I don't know if our GM's good enough to do this, because you really need like an NFL GM who can match the salaries to what these are. Because again, we had guys on our team who got poached, not poached, but they hit the portal and they got a huge amount of money. Like guys that were getting $0 in NIL money got hundreds of thousands of dollars as transfers. Guys that would have been backups at Ohio State, guys that we don't even miss at all, got substantial money. So, when you look at, when you have 3 5-star DBs, and I know how much a 5-star DB costs, like, when you go after that fourth one, there's a chance that another team that doesn't have 3 5-star DBs committed will all of a sudden say, hey, we're going to pay you more because we need you more than they do. Because eventually, like, if you give one 5-star DB an amount of money, you're probably going to have to give all 3 or 4 guys close to the same amount, or if not the same amount. Because, I mean, unless you're J.J. Smith and you're just, from Pluto, you're just a different unicorn type of player. Like, these guys all kind of know what they're getting, and you got to give most of these guys something. Again, I think that's why you take some of these young project kids, because that's kind of like, when you're running your fantasy football team and you're getting some guys on the waiver wire that help you win the title. Like, that's what some of these Ohio kids are, that they don't need a huge NIL deal to get a tight end from Cleveland or a receiver from Mansfield or whatever. Those kids you could get pretty cheap. But I mean, some of these kids that are the high ticket out of state guys where you have to fight against Tennessee and Oregon and Texas and that, I mean, it's just a different world. And again, I love it because, again, for years and years, we lost kids that were getting paid by SEC schools. And now we get to compete at it. And guess what? We're good at it. I mean, dude, we got Quinshon Judkins, we got Caleb Downs. Like we are as good as there is. Will Howard was a huge signing for us. So again, I'm here for it. But, again, every year in the NFL, you see teams lose free agents that they basically get to the point. And tomorrow, you guys that are sports fans, tomorrow's NHL and NBA free agency. Every year there's guys that go into free agency as unrestricted free agents and they get overpaid. And teams lose guys, and at some point they're not really losses when a team spends, like a sailor on shore leave, in free agency. And that's kind of what some of these schools are doing, because some of them, they need to upgrade their rosters and they're paying it. Like, I mean, Kentucky and Louisville spend like it's insane right now. And for guys that I wouldn't pay anything, they pay a lot of money to. And, like we had our O-lineman that we paid last year who stunk. He went to Louisville and got paid again. So some of these guys are really good at working the system despite not being any good at football. So, but like I said, I love where we're at. I think that, getting rid of 1870s at death's door, because they haven't raised any money and they're, they're just not in great shape right now. The foundation's killing it. And I think Ross Bjork is an absolute injection of nitrous oxide into our fundraising, because he's razor sharp. Like, we haven't had someone that sharp in 20 years at that spot. So I'm really excited to see the direction he goes. And again, the people I talk to that are at the top of the food chain at Ohio State, they love that guy. And I think that that's exciting. I mean, he crushed, his first test, which was something he didn't see coming, was hiring a baseball coach. And, the guy that he got, who's an Ohio guy who was at Campbell, did a fantastic job there. And, we've got really good baseball agents on our site. They said that guy's a grand slam home run hire. So Ross Bjork is, I mean, he made that hire, and it's been nothing but spades thus far. So really excited to see the direction of it. There's a couple cool fundraisers coming up for the foundation. They've got a lot of the in-stadium stuff this year. So, they're going to keep being able to raise this money to keep the roster strong. Because, again, like, you got to understand, when we're talking NIL, it's not just like what it's turned into, which is inducements for these recruits. It's also to fortify the roster for next year. Because guess what? Next year you're gonna keep Caleb Downs on the roster. You're gonna keep all of these guys that are gonna have a chance of going to the NFL or potentially come back for their senior year on the roster. So you got to keep you got to stockpile some of that for roster retention. Because when you've got really good players and you want to keep them here, like you can like a kid like maybe Sonny Styles who has a decision to make if he wants to go pro or if he wants to come back for year 4, like you got to break him off a little bit. So yeah, I think it's better to take care of the kids on the team and go after proven college players like Caleb Downs than to spend on some of these high school kids who've done nothing to produce in college at all, and kids that have I'm not going to get into the parents thing, but some of these parents, I mean, they pull the ripcord on their kids quick and get them out in the portal as soon as they're not starting as day one freshmen. So it's always very interesting. We got some super chats, Nevada. Anything else, and we will start digging into some super
No, the concept, the example that you used of NFL free agency is spot on. I mean, you basically have instantaneous free agency every year for your players, and when the market is set by the most desperate or most desirous or whatever it is suitor, man, it's challenging because some people are just willing to pay more. Some people just can pay more, and I'm not sure where it stops. I mean, it almost seems like they're heading towards with this revenue sharing deal, they're heading towards some sort of cap or something that kind of limits what they can do because frankly that's what you have in the NFL. That's why you have that in the NFL, is because it's just the one thing that can induce some sanity to people to not completely totally overspend. And college football right now is like you've got free agency with no cap, so where does it all end? And it's like I said, I do not I think the challenges that are facing the coaches, the administration, and people in college football have never been more difficult than they are right now. And I have so much empathy for them because the job's just so much more demanding. I mean, you think about it, back in Woody Hayes' day, he could offer unlimited scholarships, take kids, hide them away from other schools, do things. Now it's like if you wanted to leave, had to sit out a year, and so nobody was transferring. Now it's almost a completely different ball game, and like I said, I think the guys are doing the best job they possibly can, and obviously doing it at a high level. But as fans, I just think we have to have empathy for them because the challenges are so vast.
Well, I just think you have to have sharper people in the Woody Hayes. I mean, you gotta really, I mean, you gotta dig down deep and you gotta figure like this is how much money we're projected to bring in. Because again, like if Ryan, had like a really sharp guy, I'd say, look, Ryan, you got to have a guy who's your chief fundraiser outside of you. You need to have a guy who, I mean, the athletic department just has to have a guy who's literally dedicated to fundraising for NIL with Brian Schottenstein and with Bill Lewis, with the guys that are at the foundation. That's what you really need, because then you can say, okay, these are the guys, this is how we're going to organize it. And I think that's important because again, it's like, how good do you want to be? Well, it's like, how much money can we raise? And again, something that I think is going to come down the line. And again, this is just my projection, but I think eventually like some of these sports need to go away. And again, I know that Ohio State is, we've got 36 sports right now, and the SEC schools in Texas and all the major universities that we compete against, they've got 16 sports. So, again, those sports they're all loss leaders. And, again, they're all like the WNBA where they lose, $50 million every year to just operate. I mean, that's what these schools, and when you're Texas and you're Tennessee and you're trying to compete, I mean, they only have 16 sports. They don't have every sport known to God, man, and sports that frankly cost us a lot of money. Because, I talk to people at the top of the food chain in college sports, and they think that that's going to come. And there's not going to be a lot of these things. And again, that's sad, but it's also reality. Because again, when the price of doing business goes up, you got to make cuts. You got to make cuts somewhere. And again, like it's not grim, but it's just, you got to run a business, And again, when football drives the bus and it gets $1 billion TV deals, like the kids need to get a little bit of money. And again, our coaching salaries are so insanely out of whack and expensive that it's like, it's almost mind numbing how much some of these coaches make. And again, I don't care, but it's like, we pay for guys that don't really have any options to go elsewhere. We pay guys that when we get rid of them, they don't end up at they don't end up at Alabama or Georgia. They end up unemployed on the breadline. So, at some point, like the sanity has to come back to some of these coaching hires because you don't need to hire guys and pay them a ton of money when they really don't have a market, because that's something where it's just like in the NFL. Like when I was in the league, and I talked to some of the agents, some of the people I knew, like I'd look at free agency and I'd be like, how did that guy get that much money from like the Colts or the Dolphins? And every year there'd be a couple of teams that would just spend just insane amounts of money for guys that really didn't have markets. Like a guy would get like a $38 million deal, and his next best offer was like a 3-year, $15 million deal. And I'm like, how aren't the it's like Jim Irsay was spending like a drunken sailor that day, and he signed all these guys, and it's kind of like Daniel Snyder. Like Daniel Snyder back in the day spent, he signed Hainsworth and Deion Sanders, and he spent all this Bruce Smith, all this money, and it didn't really work out. Like A&M did, and like some of these teams that are trying to build these rosters by just handing out NIL money like it's Pez. I don't think it always works out in the end. All right, let's get the super chats. Brush Popper, thanks. 01, thanks for the 5. If you have a question, toss that in the chat. I do not see a question here. Appreciate you, brother. Luke Nicely, thank you for the deuce. And I see that you have a question next. Again, thank you for the 5. Appreciate you, my friend. Kirk, Nevada. Outside of David Sanders Jr., where does the O-line class stand? What is the realistic end of the class look like versus the dream class? Well, we got Carter Lowe as a 5-star tackle, in my opinion. I think he's really good. We got Jake Cook, who I think has got a lot of upside, and he's a tough kid. And he is the kid that's probably improved more than any kid in Ohio, just because he decided to work. Like he went out for wrestling. He's lost a lot of fat. He trained with Eric Lichter, really became explosive. And again, like that's just, and shout out to his parents. His parents paid for a good trainer to train him and make him into a different type of athlete than he was. And good for him, dude. I mean, I'm telling you, like it's like when you pay for a kid to get developed like that, his family, by spending money on getting him trained, turned him into an Ohio State football player. Because if he doesn't get trained, he's not an Ohio State football player. He's going to Louisville or wherever. But I mean, he got him up to being like a top tier football player. So I love him. I know we're in on some other kids, some interior guys, but David Sanders Jr. He's the prize. Mike DeBoe's committed to Bama. I don't think we're done with him, but you never know. And again, I think that I think you keep recruiting these kids until the very end. I think that as the season plays out, there's always movement, and teams don't do as well, teams do great, and these kids are kind of schizophrenic sometimes. Like you look at the kid from Iowa who went from Iowa to Bama to Iowa to back to Bama, Caden Proctor. Like you keep recruiting these kids as long as you have to. But David Sanders Jr. He's the guy. I mean, any other year Carter Lowe would be perfect. But if you get him and David Sanders Jr., that's as good of a class as we've had in a long time. And then next year we've got a great in-state Ohio offensive tackle class. So, I think that if Justin Fry lands David Sanders Jr., I think that he's got a nice little road. He's got a nice little 2-year window where it's like, it's always substantially easier to land in-state kids. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do over the next years. But David Sanders, I mean, they emptied the clip trying to get David Sanders Jr., and I don't know what else we could possibly do to get him. So they didn't leave any stone unturned on his official visit. They brought out all the big guns, and I feel great about where we're at with the kid. And I know we're off from the sun, the moon, and the stars, and we're probably going to name Ohio Stadium David Sanders Jr. Field if we get him at this point. So Nevada, where are you at again with the O-line class outside of David Sanders Jr.? What does the O-line class? Where does it stand, and what does the realistic end of the class look like versus the dream class? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the dream class really is David Sanders and Carter Lowe. I mean, that is the dream class. Everything else, I'm excited about Jake Cook. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's a developmental guy that's going to turn out to be a really good player here. And whoever else they add is, like I said, is just icing on the cake. But I mean, the dream class has always been David Sanders and Carter Lowe. And you're 50% of the way there. I think they're getting David Sanders. Everybody I talk to thinks they're getting David Sanders. So, but I thought they were getting Dorian Brew. So nothing surprises me in recruiting anymore. But like you said, I think they've handled the recruitment really responsibly. All signs are pointing that way. I feel really good about it. I don't see any. There's no flashing red flags that are laying there below the. Like I said, the only thing that could be is if just in his mind, if for some reason he was just enamored with playing in the SEC, and I haven't heard that from anybody credible. But I know with some kids that's the thing. But I think that for all the reasons we've talked about, the Paris Johnson relationship, the Monica Johnson relationship, the academic profile of the school, the success with tackles, the NIL package, the profile of Ohio State, I think Ohio State's getting him, and I think that is the dream class. So I think the reality class and the dream class are really close together. It's a class of one right now, as far as I'm concerned. Get David Sanders, and we're all happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad at this point that we've got the number one. I feel like we're Veruca from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where it's like we want the golden goose. If we don't get the golden goose, then everything sucks and our life's over. And how are we ever going to survive? Because like, if we don't get David Sanders Jr., we're still going to have the number one class in the country. But it's like there's always that guy that like the whole world gets like fixated on, where it's like we have to get this kid, or else shut the program down, fire Justin Fry, fire Ryan Day, fire everyone in the building. But they did everything they could do, you know. And again, the thing about now, and again, I know I do my little NIL diatribes, and people, you know, they glaze over because they're sick of hearing about it. But like, this is why I love NIL, because for a kid like him, I know what he costs, and it's very expensive. And guess what? We can actually pay it, because in the olden days of us being goody two shoes, we didn't do that. At least not overtly. No, I'm not stupid. I know there are guys that I'm sure were on the take that were around Ohio State. I get that. But now, like, we can literally, it's just open negotiation and open contracts and agents. And like, I actually like that, because then it's not all back alley, run the money through the church, Cam Newton stuff. So, you know, I really like how it is now. And, you know, for a kid like David Sanders Jr., it does nothing but help Ohio State that NIL is the way that it is right now. HH Buckeye 5, thank you for the 10. Appreciate you, my friend. Hi, as you go through the dudes verbally, obviously Sanders is the big fish, but I still feel linebacker and tight end could use more filling out. Are there any booms coming that you see here in Nevada OH? Well, I mean, we have two tight ends. I mean, we're gonna get the kid from Gilmore School, Lennon. So I think the tight end's done. When you got Nate Roberts and you get Lennon, linebacker. I mean, I think Riley Pettijohn is the guy that's the guy that we've got a lot of smoke around right now. I know that's James's number one guy. So you know, again, we've got TJ Alford kind of sniffing around other schools right now. Pettijohn, I think, is fantastic. You know, like I really kind of like our linebacker room right now. I think, you know, you get CJ Hicks for another year, you get him and Sonny next year as our starters after Cody Simon graduates. Gabe Powers is a guy that is really coming on from the people I talked to over the summer. So, you know, when you play two linebackers, I don't sweat it as bad as the old three linebacker days. You know, we don't play three linebackers because there aren't fullbacks anymore. So you don't need to match up and have a middle linebacker to match up against a fullback like you had to in the olden days. So I really like where we're trending. I think James has done a great job. I think tight end is done with the, you know, you don't take three tight ends in the class. So we're going to have our two tight ends. And then I think, you know, linebacker, you know, you got to get Riley Pettijohn. I mean, he's the guy from Texas who James loves. And I think that he's the guy that we're going to recruit and offer a sizable NIL deal to get here. Got to beat Texas and Texas A&M on him. So, Nevada, your thoughts again, HH Buckeye. Thank you for the 10. He says, as you go through the dudes verbally, obviously David Sanders Jr. is the big fish, but I could still feel linebacker and tight end could use some more filling out. Again, I appreciate that, but I don't know. I honestly don't know if we've ever taken three tight ends in a class ever, because like that's a lot of tight ends, especially when we go two tight ends, like maybe 5 or 10% of an entire game. That's a lot of tight ends. Are there any booms coming out there that you could see? Nevada, your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, Lennon and Roberts in the class, so I think your tight end recruiting's done. Two good ones, two really, really good ones. You know, linebackers. You know, I mean, it depends how you look at Justin Hill. Is he an outline linebacker? Is he, an edge? Where's he playing? But Riley Pettijohn's the guy. Talked to a really good source down in Texas, and I'm not saying they've written him off to Ohio State, but they all think he's coming to Ohio State. So we'll see. I don't think that'd be a shocker to people right now. I think there's been a lot of smoke around him, and I think James Hornacek has done an unbelievable job recruiting him. I know he's super high on Ohio State's board, super high on James's board, and if we got Riley Pettijohn, I would be ecstatic. That's a guy that you talk about different recruits where there's different degrees of caring and despair that would go along with losing. I wouldn't be in despair, but I'd be ecstatic if we got him because I think he's a heck of a player, and I think he would really shine under James's tutelage.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you talk about the despair because I love that you brought up like Prescott Burgess and Sean Crable and people. I know everyone lives and dies in recruiting. We talk about recruiting basically every day on this show, but in the olden days, in 20 years ago when we were getting recruited and we lose Prescott to Michigan, mind you, Prescott Burgess had a tongue ring. So I knew when we lost him, that wasn't a loss because, come on. And then Sean Crable, whose two greatest plays in his entire career were not blocking the edge guy when Appy State blocked the field goal at the end of the game, and then hitting Troy out of bounds when he was 5 feet out of bounds. He hit him and got us a 15-yard penalty to ice the game down for us. On signing day, people were like jumping off cliffs. They were jumping off the top of the bridge at Lane Avenue because we lost those guys. And we lost like Stanley McClover, who sucked, didn't do anything in his career. And I forget who else. Like there's some guys that like flipped at the last minute. Stanley was in our class and went to Auburn last minute. So it's like, who cares? So again, and we're in better shape now than we were back then. Like my class, I think we were like a top 15 class. Like this class is the number one class. And dude, Tavius Sinclair just won the Rivals MVP. Like absolutely lights out at this big 5-star camp. So, we're led by the guy who's probably going to end up being the highest rated quarterback in the class. And we've got stars galore on top of JJ Smith and the rest. So it's going to be a really, really special time. So, I love where we're at in recruiting, despite what some people like to be worried about, but I can't worry about it especially when we have the number one class. D Sunny, what's up, brother? I missed you yesterday. Thank you for the 5. What was the biggest shocker as of a recruit that we landed? Was J.K. Dobbins hard to believe because he committed without visiting? Nevada, what are your thoughts on that? That's a great question. I'll let you go first on this one.
I'm going to go Von Bell. Von Bell was one that just because, we were going against everybody on him, and it was, a late in the day or, signing day type of commitment type of thing. And we had never seemed to really win those battles, especially against Southern schools. And there wasn't a lot of optimism on, in the kind of the recruiting circles on Vaughn. So Vaughn would have to be up there for me as pleasant surprises for sure. And boy, turned out to be a terrific Buckeye, great player all the way around. And but yeah, I'd say Von Bell would probably be my biggest surprise.
Mine was, and this will be a different one. Curtis Grant was low-key shocking to me just because Curtis was, he was the number 2 player in the entire country. The only guy that was above him when we got him in 2011 was Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney is probably the greatest high school player I've ever seen. Go watch his highlight tape from high school, and it's like that dude could have played in the National Football League as an 18-year-old. I'm not kidding. I played in the league, and there were guys that weren't as good as him when he was an 18-year-old. But, Curtis was the number 2 guy, and you go watch his high school tape, and I was like, I thought we were getting the next Ray Lewis. I really did. He was dominant. He was fast. He was huge. For a linebacker, he looked like an NFL player as an 18-year-old. And I'll never forget, like we hosted his official visit. We used to take the kids to the old Eddie George's Bar and Grill, which used to be like right on High Street. You guys probably all remember the location. It was right next to the Barnes and Noble bookstore. And like, I remember we'd take him there. And great kid. Like I really liked him, and I was talking to him and chopping it up with him. Like I said, I thought he was a great kid. I was really excited about him. He was just so highly rated. I was like, we don't do great on getting guys like this traditionally from Virginia. Everyone in Bama wanted him, Florida, everyone in the world wanted this kid. And I remember he ordered, they had like this signature, like 27 ounce, like porterhouse steak. And, that was like, because Eddie was obviously number 27. So that's 27-ounce steak. He got his steak cooked well done. And I swear to God, it took them like an hour to cook the steak. So I'll never forget, like, everyone's food comes out. Everyone's kind of waiting for Curtis's food. Like, I waited because I didn't care. And I was like, I'm not going to start eating before the number 2 kid in the country does. But Curtis, like, I'm telling you, like, the food's all out. And all the other kids have started eating because they're just like, screw it. Let's eat our food while it's hot. Like, 30 more minutes go by and they finally bring out Curtis's steak. And I was like, I eyed myself because I was like, we just lost the best linebacker in the country because it took him an hour to cook his stupid well done steak. But we still got him, which again, when every other kid and every other coach and every other parent and every other staffer and janitor, when they all have their food set down at this huge table of 50 people, and the best player in the entire room and the most coveted player in the room doesn't have his food, you're just like, can we please fire everybody that works in that kitchen, or please fire the manager, please fire everybody? But it was Curtis's fault because he ordered a well done, like, humongous, like, thick steak. So I was like, there's no way we're getting this kid because we screwed. That's why we screwed it up, because he didn't get a steak like in time, but he still came. So that was great. But I remember sitting there and I was like, we just lost Curtis Grant because it took him an hour to get his food, and everybody else had their food in 15 minutes because they know who we are. We had the whole back room booked for the official visits, and they really did a good job with it. But now they take him to Hyde Park, which is a million times better. Because back in the olden days, we were balling on a budget at Ohio State. Now there is no budget. Thank you, Urban Frank Meyer. So mine's Curtis Grant because he had his hour-long steak fiasco, which was mind-numbingly bad. David Pinteric, what is up, brother? Thank you for the 20. Thanks for being an Ultra member as well. I hope you guys are driving safe if you're heading back from Beham. I hope Rachel is good. Hope Janet is good if she's in the car listening with you. Hey, guys, good to be able to listen live. Sorry, I missed Saturday. Will this be the most impactful Buckeye class? I think it could be. For me, though, the hard part is, like, when I think about a recruiting class now, I tack the... I don't just do like a high school recruiting class. Now, to me, I make it a big glob of high school recruiting class, returnees that return for their senior years, and transfer portal. Because this past class is going to be the standard bearer for probably as long as I live. Because you get Caleb Downs, Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard, Will Kazmarek. Then you get Jack Sawyer back. You get JT Tuimoloau. Then you get Jeremiah Smith. So I'm not going to name everybody because you guys don't want to be here till midnight. But I think, to me, it's kind of like if you judge an NFL team by their offseason and you generally compute the draft plus free agency plus retention of their current roster. Like, that's kind of how I'm going to do it from now on. Because, in the old days, like, if you wanted to upgrade your roster, it was basically, who do you get in your recruiting class? Now, there's just way more ways to do it. And especially with the NIL and the way more guys are going to stay in college, which I love. I love seeing Jack Sawyer for his senior year and JT Tuimoloau for their senior year. I think, this past year is going to be the standard bearer, but, going forward, there's going to be some guys with decisions to make about going to the league or not. And I'm thinking Josh Simmons, Sonny Styles, guys that, they're going to have a decision to make. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. And how, Davison Igbinosun is going to be a big one for sure. He's the guy that's going to be on the watch list. He's a freaky cornerback. So I'm going to look at all that. But Nevada, what are your thoughts? I think that this year is this is going to be a big time recruiting class. But like I said, do you evaluate it as just one-to-one recruiting classes, or do you do it as like an off-season total? Because it didn't really exist previously. Like, I mean, when I was in the old, 5 years ago, like, it wasn't really the transfers plus the recruiting class, but now it absolutely is to me. But what are your thoughts on that? Again, David Pinteric, thank you. He says, hey guys, sorry, or good to listen to it live. Sorry, I missed Saturday. Will this be the most impactful Buckeye class? What are your thoughts, Nevada?
Yeah, I think your point about talent acquisition and retaining talent and adding talent via the portals a really good one and an underrated point. I'd add one more thing is like adding coaching staff. Especially now that they've kind of expanded the coaching staff with kind of expanded the importance of these analyst positions. Every position now is a potential on-field coaching position, and so I think it's not only player personnel, but it's how well did you do with your support personnel? How well did you do with your coaching staff? Because much like all these other teams are basically farm teams for Ohio State and some of the bigger schools, all these teams are potential farm teams for Ohio State from a coaching perspective, because we've talked about the craziness in coaching salaries. Salaries at Ohio State aren't going to go down; they're only going to go up as you're adding more and more and more of these. Position coach number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, go on down the list, and they're all making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. It's not going to get down anytime soon. But no, last year was going to be tough to beat. This one, just from a pure recruiting standpoint, the challenge on this is that some of the best recruiting classes ever have faded out, and you look at these classes, and when you go back in time, you look at it and you're like, wow, man, if you get 25% of these kids that are actually producers, that's good. And 50% is crazy. We've talked about the 2002 class where it was like 70 or 80% of them were productive, was just unbelievable. So you just don't know how many of them are going to be productive. But on paper, this is as good or better than any recruiting class that I've ever seen at Ohio State. If we get the guys we think we're going to get, it might end up being it's gonna rank right up there with some of the greatest recruiting classes of all time in college football. So we'll just have to see how they pan out. But on paper, boy, it sure looks good.
Yeah, you look at the vaunted Texas A&M class from 3 years ago. That was the highest rated class in the history of these stupid, composite ratings, and their best players transferred. Their superstar defensive tackle went to Ole Miss. So it's like, I don't know. Is it smart? I know that people love recruiting rankings, they love star rankings, but I think that, if you recalibrate it and look at what guys end up doing after their careers, it's just like any talent evaluation metric. It's like when they do an NFL draft class grade, the day after the draft, Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, they do that because people love to read that. They love to see that. It's just like fodder for the offseason. But then you look back in 4 years and you look at, wow, that guy turned into a superstar. Wow, that guy was a huge bust. Wow, that guy made, set the record in free agency and he was a mid-round guy. I don't know. You look at the Browns draft class from last year, DeJuan Jones should have been a first-round pick, and he's a guy that's going to make a fortune on his second deal. So does that bump the Browns up a little bit? I think it does. On draft day, they probably weren't thinking, "Oh my God, let's pop champagne with DeJuan." But I think that in my class, again, I always go back to the Wayback Machine, which is that's my favorite machine in the entire world. But people were lighting cigars when we got Darius Hiley, who was a 5-star All-World player. When Louis Rosari decommitted from Ohio State, committed to Miami, decommitted to Miami, and recommitted to Ohio State. It was like, you would have thought we won another national title when Lewis came back to Ohio State and left the Miami Hurricanes. It was, and neither of those guys did a meaningful thing. The only thing people remember Lewis for is that he got arrested and he dropped a touchdown that Justin Zoik threw him. So, that's people, but that's why I'm like, guys, you should see, what some of these other guys end up doing, because, there were guys in that class that were really productive that weren't, I'm not talking about me, but Ashton Yabodi ended up being, a third-round pick, was a really good corner for us. Dante obviously was by far the best player. He went 8th overall in the draft. Gonzo went first round. And Gonzo wasn't anywhere near as heralded as Darius Hiley. They both ended up playing receiver at Ohio State. And if you said what on signing day, which one's going to be the first-round pick, there isn't a human on this earth that would have picked Gonzo over Darius Hiley. But when they got on the field, it was very apparent who was the better player. All right. D Sunny again. What's up, brother? Appreciate you, my man. Thank you for the 5. Random, but as NFL fans would like to get the league to get rid of the franchise tag. Every year, a franchise QB could test the quarterback or could test the market. I think that I like the franchise tag because I think that it allows you to keep at least one really good player on your roster. But if you're I talk about with the roster management and managing NIL deals for recruits and roster retention, if the Minnesota Vikings had all their guys go up in free agency right now, like, could they really afford to sign Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison at the same time? No, because they're both going to want 25 million each. So one of them's going to have to walk. And again, that's kind of the tightrope you walk in college football right now. And these guys are, Ohio State's middle part of the roster, the middle tier players that are like the two deep guys, they get hit up by, middlemen to go to hit the portal and make serious cash. Guys that aren't really valued at Ohio State. Now Ohio State's they have to pay their middle tier guys to stick in the roster. That's part of the new calculus when you're computing how much money you can pay to your JJ Smiths, your Caleb Downs, your middle guys, your bottom guys, just for like some support, whatever. It's just a different world. So I think, with the franchise tag, if every quarterback in the league was on a 1-year contract and every year there was no franchise tag, like there could just be one crazy owner that's like, you know what? I want Pat Mahomes. I'm going to pay him $100 million a year, $150 million, whatever. I'm going to break my salary cap for 1 year with Pat Mahomes and just roll the dice on the rest of the roster because that's what could happen. And again, that's what some of these teams, they do. I'm fine with, I love that these kids are getting paid NIL, but Ohio State, they're very astute. They've got specific guys in the Woody Hayes that know the markets for kids. They've got really good ties with the agent communities, just like we do. And they know what the going rate is for kids. So when some kid gets some absolutely insane offer and he commits elsewhere, it is what it is. I mean, you just gotta let it go and build your roster out. Again, like I said, if you guys are NHL fans and NBA fans, like you'll see guys get paid crazy money in the next 2 days. And a lot of these teams, like they look back and they're like, God, I'm glad we didn't give that guy that deal. You saw how that thing turned out. You give some kid with crazy parents a bunch of money, like that ain't gonna end up well. I'm just telling you. And that's just, kind of, and again, that's not a Dorian Brew shot. I'm just saying, like, I've heard stories about kids getting recruited, and when the parents are driving the bus, man, it ain't always good. So sometimes, it's addition by subtraction, or addition by, not even subtraction, addition by not getting. So it is what it is. And again, I wish Dorian Brew the best, and if he becomes a Buckeye, great. If he doesn't, great. The program will be just fine without him. Because again, if there's one spot, it's like missing on a receiver. Like at this point, who cares? Like missing on a DB with how deep our secondary is, I can't fathom caring about that. Nevada, your thoughts, random, but as NFL fans, would you like the league to get rid of the franchise tag? Like I said, I would not, because if I've got Mahomes or Trevor Lawrence or somebody, like I don't want that guy to hit the unrestricted free agency market. There's no way. Every year a franchise QB could test the market. What are your thoughts, Nevada?
Yeah, see, I'm pro stability. I like, you know, I just as a fan, I'm just talking about strictly as a fan, whether this is fair or not, or constitutional or whatever. I like knowing who the players are. I like being able to follow the players, knowing who's on the team. Um, so I like the franchise tag. I think it promotes stability. I think it promotes some sort of financial sanity, and I'm all for that. But that's just a general rule for me on everything. I like everything because I liked the kind of the romantic notion of having guys that were on your team and stayed on your team. And for me, that's the biggest challenge of college football right now is just the uncontrolled use of the portal. I hope it kind of calms down. I think it probably will, but I hope it does because I think about college basketball right now. Like, when I grew up, I could name college basketball players. Like right now, I literally could not name 3 college basketball players for next year. Like if you said, here's $1 million, name 3 players playing college basketball next year, I'm not sure I could do it. And I used to be able to name entire starting fives, from opposing teams, let alone Ohio State. I knew the entire roster. So it's a super challenge, and I think it's really hurt college basketball. So I like the franchise tag in the NFL.
Well, I like it because if you draft a superstar like the Cleveland Browns get Myles Garrett, like you don't want that guy to ever leave, ever. Now, again, if you franchise him multiple years in a row, I mean, it gets to be an insane cost, but you can still pay it. That's why most of these teams, they come to grips and they say, like, let's just work out a long-term deal, pay Miles, I don't know if he's making like $150 million or whatever for like 5 years or 7 years, whatever he makes. Like, but he's the highest paid. I mean, when he signed his deal, he's the highest paid end in the history of the league, maybe the highest paid defensive player. But I like it because, if you get your Aaron Rodgers or your Mahomes or CJ Stroud, like CJ Stroud is never going to see the open market in a million years, unless he, gets vertigo or falls off the earth somehow in the next 2 years. Like, he's going to be a Texan for the rest of his life. And again, I like that. Like, I like that, if you're smart enough to scout and you hit a gem and he's a guy that's a really good player and you can franchise him and keep him locked on your team, like, I think it's great. It's the same with the NHL where, the young players they get restricted free agency. They have a 3-year entry level deal. Then they have a multiple year restricted free agency deal. Then they're unrestricted after like 5 years. And then you've got, like the NBA, like if you sign a max deal, you get more money if you stay with your home team. Again, I like when there's some loyalty, but I also think I like when you're financially rewarded for loyalty. Like, Jaylen Brown re-signed with the Celtics and signed a huge deal, $300 million deal. But he got that money because he stayed in Boston as opposed to hitting unrestricted free agency where he would have made 50 or 60 less. I remember Michael Redd when he was when he was in his prime and had a chance to join the Cavs with LeBron, like, he re-signed in Milwaukee because he could make an extra like $40 million or 30, it was something crazy like that. He signed a max deal back, 15 years ago, whenever it was. And people were like, well, what's another 30 million on top of, 90 million? I was like, well, it's another $30 million. So, I mean, I don't know anybody in the universe that's going to turn that down to play the exact same game and do the exact same thing. Especially when it's a team that drafted you and believed in you and developed you into an all-star and the whole 9 yards. So I like that. And again, that's why I like what Ohio State did with the roster this year. Like, they paid Jack Sawyer, they paid JT Tuimoloau, Tyreek, all these kids that come back, and then the mid-tier guys, CJ Hicks got paid a little bit. Caleb Downs, like, I like that. Again, when the coaches when everyone's making money, it's good that they can retain these rosters and these kids can live on some, on DoorDash instead of top ramen every single night. Pooh Beard 12, thank you for being an ultra member. Appreciate you, brother, as always. Thank you for being on here and always having great questions and hilarious questions. There was a program who employed a goon. Oh my God, this is great. This is in rebuttal to the Michigan dude who cheated, but they felt themselves immune. He thought he was slick, wearing shades like a prick. Oh my God. Now he's caught and they're facing their doom. Hubert, you're the man, dude. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic. I'm sure that you had that spaced out correctly, like you're like a poem. And I'm glad I was able to find the pauses. So shout out to you for putting the capital letters where you needed the little line breaks on your poem. And I tried to hit that as clean as I could with the rhyming. But Hubert, you're the man. That is absolutely hilarious. And that is great. And that is surely in rebuttal to the Michigan folks that were on here. And they super chat these like funny, dumb things all the time. But I appreciate you, my man. Nevada, any reaction to Pooh Beard's fantastic poem that he super chatted us?
Yeah, no, I want somebody to explain to me what a haiku is, though. Like I like poems because I kind of understand them because they like rhyme like that. But then people write haikus and they don't rhyme, so they don't make any sense. But it's kind of supposed to be like the same thing.
I mean, it's just like a 17 syllable Japanese poem. It's 575. Five syllables.
That doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't rhyme. If it doesn't rhyme, it's not a poem, right?
No, it's a haiku.
Oh man, I like poems better than haiku. I think Pooh Bear's poem. I would take that over any haiku right there. That poem.
So
right
this is a haiku.
Awesome.
Brown leaf, day quivers, a sudden gust, branches snap, beauty and dying. That is a haiku.
That sucks, man. That sucks. I like Pooh Bear.
I didn't write it. If I would have wrote it, it would have been amazing. But I didn't write it. I just Googled what is a haiku so I could explain that to you real quick.
I don't really know. I think I missed. That was like one thing like I missed in like English class or something. I think I was gone or like I moved schools and they didn't explain it because they talk about this haiku and I'm like, what the heck is a haiku? I don't like it. It doesn't rhyme.
You don't like it? Not a fan.
I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
All right, Nevada. And this is going to be for you. Weird Science. 1980s movie, Weird
Okay.
Science. Tony Alford reminds me of the poop version of Chet sitting on the kitchen floor at the end of the movie, Nevada OH. I've never seen Weird Science, so I can.
want to say, come on, Weird Science. No, who played Chet?
I have no idea. I've never seen it.
Bill Paxton. The great Bill Paxton, the late Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton's died, and Weird Science. The experiment was none other than Kelly LeBrock, which in prime Kelly LeBrock was about as good as it gets back in the day. And
what's Weird Science about?
It's like a kid. It's like a it was one of those teen comedies where they did like an experiment and they invented this thing. They invented this, like, it was like their Frankenstein, but they invented it. It was Kelly LeBrock, and she had all these like magical powers and could do stuff and made these nerds cool and stuff like that. And it was really cool. Good movie.
I mean, that is some serious hairspray right there now. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's quality. That is quality.
That is. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, there's a hole in the ozone just looking at this photo right now. You know,
that takes me back. That's beautiful.
Nothing like some. I mean, of all the things that we talked about on the show, Weird Science coming up. I'll have to watch that tonight. That's
it's funny. It's funny. Very funny movie.
All right. I think we could wrap this. I know that you're out and about skis right now. Do you have any final thoughts? Do you want me to leave Kelly on while you're talking, or do you want me to take her off? So can you focus and give a final? You can't give a final dissertation.
Well, okay, better. That's much better. No,
you need to think of ice water thrown on you.
I do, man. Kelly Brock was. I mean, that was prime, man. That was really good stuff. That's good stuff.
Oh, she's like an earlier Kelly Kapowski.
Oh, that was strong too. Oh man,
strong.
Don't get me started on Saved by the Bell. Yeah, Tiffany Amber Thiessen, that was really good.
Strong.
Okay, now we're moving on. Tomorrow, Operation Maxwell Roy. Tomorrow, we got to put all of our positive energy. Another St. Joe's prep kid. I think we get him. Tomorrow. I think that's when this happens. It's unless the world kind of loses off its axis and the recruiting world deals us another surprise. But let's get back on everything's happening according to order. Maxwell Roy commits to Ohio State tomorrow, and that's what we talk about tomorrow night.
Is that so? This is your proclamations. We're going to get back to being happy in the recruiting scene again.
I'm speaking it into existence right now. That after Kelly LeBrock being put on there, I think this is a happy time for all of us right now. So yeah, back to happy thoughts.
I love that. I think that's perfect. Well, that's a great way to end it on a nice happy note on a Sunday. Appreciate you guys as always kicking with us. Again, thank you to all of you that showed up at Twin Peaks. Shout out to my Ironton boys, my Southern Ohio boys, my people from Lima, Toledo, you guys from all over the place. Appreciate all you guys showing up again. It was a great time. Shout out to my guy, John Mariotti. He was there. He was there nice and early. Good thing about you guys. You guys came early, stayed late. It was great. Kim was out there doing her thing. Shout out Kim. She made some fire cheeseburger quesadilla for me before I got in here. It was delicious. Shout out Kim. I appreciate you guys, as always, kicking it on a Sunday night. If you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell. That'll give you an alert every time we go live. We appreciate you guys. This is another huge show because you guys made it one. So thank you. Great super chats. Again, thank you. Those going to Pay It Forward. We're signing up a lot of new people to the site. So we appreciate you. And again, shout out to and thank you to our armed forces and our police officers, as always, for keeping us safe. First responders, firefighters, all of you guys. Thank you guys so very much. Again, we'll be back at 7 tomorrow. It'll be another great show. Hopefully, be breaking down a very nice commitment, a huge commitment, and we're going to get through all that. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. We appreciate you guys so very much. I hope you guys have a great Sunday night and a great, strong start to your week tomorrow on Monday. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.